I work as the director of the Ukrainian service of Radio Free Europe Radio Liberty and have been responsible for all our coverage since spring of 2013. Ukraine is the only European country at war. It has been forced to defend itself for more than 5 years. Ukraine is also a European country where anti-corruption reporting or whistleblowing can cost you life. Tonight, I am going to tell you the 5 stories of 5 people from my own newsroom. Each is different, but each will tell you something similar: the danger of operating as an independent journalist or blogger in Ukraine. Some of them work in the occupied areas, such as parts of eastern Ukraine and the Crimean Peninsula. But even those who work in Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, cannot avoid grave risks. Time for the first story. This is Stanislav Aseyev. He is from eastern Ukraine. In spring of 2014, Russia-backed forces took over Stanislav's hometown, Donetsk. Most journalists left the city, but he decided to stay. He was one of the very few independent voices there. He kept doing his job. Stanislav reported for our website and later for radio about all aspects of life under occupation in eastern Ukraine. Stanislav said, "We will be defeated not in the field, but when the last person with a Ukrainian dream will leave." In the spring of 2017, Stanislav was captured. Since then, he has been in prison. That means that he already spent 3 birthdays behind bars. Stanislav turned 30 in October. Despite all efforts, we've had very little information about him. But there are some things we've learned. One is that he has been tortured. The other, at one point, Stanislav went on hunger strike. This October, we learned that Stanislav has been sentenced to 15 years in prison. The reason? Espionage. Last year, we saw the only video of Stanislav. It was shown on the Russian state TV.
Статьи, по которой, собственно, меня и обвиняют по законодательству двойной шпионаж, то в данном случае, да, эти обвинения я признаю, я их не отрицаю.
In this video, Stanislav confesses that he is a spy. Me and my colleagues have analyzed the footage very carefully, and we are convinced that this confession was forced. However, there is a little beacon of hope. Stanislav might be exchanged after the verdict during prisoner swap. This might happen even this month, and negotiations depend on Russia. This is my second story, that of Oleg Hozuki. Oleg is from the Ukrainian city called Torez. He is a former university teacher and he holds a PhD. When the occupation began, Oleg started reporting to us from his hometown, just like Stanislav. Both have anonymously contributed to our web project, Letters from Occupied Donbass, and we modeled that project after BBC Letters from ISIS. Oleg reported about schools, gas shortages, and also about MH17 flight, which was shot down nearby by Russia-backed separatists. In August of 2017, Oleg was detained. Why? After 2 years, we still have no clue. This is Alena Mutko, a photographer. Alena has been documenting the everyday life of Crimeans, including Russians, Ukrainians, and Crimean Tatars. Alena has taken us to Epiphany celebrations in Sevastopol, and she has shown the world how family life of Crimean Tatars was destroyed after their loved ones were put on trial. In Crimea, concerns about the religious extremism are often used to punish any dissent. In February of this year, Alena tried to enter Crimea again. This time, she was stopped. She cannot enter the Crimean Peninsula for over 9 years due to Russian national security grounds. This is Mikkola Seminarov. Mikkola is a very experienced Ukrainian journalist. He has written hundreds of reports. In April of 2016, Mikkola's house was searched along with 7 other people. Mikkola was suspected in cooperation with my newsroom. And I immediately asked myself, what did we do wrong? How we could have helped him? Mikkola was convicted. The reason was one of his blogs. It was about the economic blockade of the Crimean Peninsula. There is a particular law in Russia. If you say that Crimea belongs to Ukraine, you can be put to jail for up to 5 years. Mikkola received 2.5 years suspended sentence, and he is prohibited from practicing his occupation, that is, journalism. My colleagues are facing pressure not only from Russia, but also from their own country, Ukraine. If Ukrainian journalists report on shady deals of the Ukrainian authorities, they get a notice. You are rocking the boat. In social media, it gets worse. My colleagues who work in Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, have been called spies who work for the Kremlin. The fifth and final of my colleagues, whose story I want to share with you tonight, is Natalia Sedletska. She is the leader of our investigative team. In early 2018, we had a scoop, and it was aired in the program that Natalia Sedletska runs. The story was about the Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, who had spent his Christmas vacations in the Maldives. Poroshenko is a millionaire. Therefore, the question was not whether he could afford this luxurious trip. The question was how he crossed the border with his family, whether forged documents were used, and why his trip was kept as a secret. Remember, the country is at war. What happened next? In the summer of 2018, Prosecutor's General Office has requested an access to Natalia Sedletska's cell phone, her locations for a year and a half, but officials did not get it. The European Court of Human Rights has intervened to reject this government demand. This year, Ukraine had an election, and the government has changed. The State Bureau of Investigations has opened a probe about the Maldives trip of the former president. Good news? Not really. 2 months ago, in October, the court ruled that our newsroom has to share all the information about the presidential trip, including how the story was exactly edited. And I can reveal to you now that we had a discussion about limits of privacy before going on air. The government investigator also wanted to know the salaries of our journalists and cameramen. If we refused, searches could follow. We had to go to court ourselves. If officials are hunting the journalists, this will encourage others as well. Former politician and lawyer Andriy Portnov doesn't want the team of Natalia Sedletska to report on him either. In November, he published license plates of our newsroom cars and home addresses of drivers. I will release private and personal information on all of you till the 10th generation, Portnov promised. When I have started my job 6 years ago, I could never have imagined that I would have to spend so much time on seeking legal support. This part of our work is not often discussed. It also has to happen behind scenes. It includes digging out the information about our colleagues who are kept behind bars. Key news about Stanislav Aseyev we learned from former inmates who were in prison with him. The same about Oleg Hozuki. Mikkola Seminarov cannot leave Crimea to get a medical treatment he urgently needs. Without photo correspondents like Alena Mutko, we would know much less about everyday life in Crimea. And I have to say that Natalia Sedletska is the strongest woman I know. Tonight, I wanted to share with you these stories of my colleagues. They are fearless journalists who have worked hard, have been persecuted and harassed. And because of what? Because they believe that people have the right to know.